In Acts chapter 17, Paul talks about God having divided everybody up into different borders and territories and times of their set habitations and all that, if haply they might feel after him. And you can look over to the east and you can see what they were doing to feel after God, to find God, to seek after God. And so when they come across things like the way, you can see that there is convergence there with what Jesus actually said is the case. So they were on to something. So sometimes you can look back and look for that convergence and learn something from it. Now, what I have right below that is Christian history. It's just a depiction of Christian history. And we'll say over here on the right-hand side, where I just highlighted this area over here, we'll say that that's perhaps us, okay? That's us in the current day, current age. And when you look back through Christian history, ideally what you would want to find is people who are oriented toward the sacred infinite, toward God, toward Christ, toward the divine, that sort of thing. They are working with each other to facilitate their orientation toward the infinite, toward the sacred infinite, toward God. That's ideally what you would like to see. So this statement down here, ideally Christian history would or should be a record of people being oriented toward the noetic, vertical, facilitated by the dianoetic, the horizontal. Okay? That's ideally what you would want to find if you look back in time into Christian history. But what do we find? Okay? What do we find? We find something a little different. If I look back here, let's say I look at these Christians here. So instead of being oriented toward God, they accidentally got oriented toward debate and rivalry instead. As you can see right here, they get oriented toward debate and rivalry. And this debate and rivalry acts as a blocker, blocking them from having an encounter or an interface with God. And there's like a ricochet effect here, and I have this little orange arrow that points down to this little box here. And what that debate, rivalry, victory, when you're oriented toward debate and rivalry and victory, you could think Augustine and Pelagius, you wind up with a byproduct of that. And the byproduct of that debate, rivalry, and desire for victory, being oriented toward those things, is a proposition-only kind of knowing. It's deception. It's ideology. It winds up with attachment. You become attached to the propositions that you debated with, and you form your identity around it. And then you get resentful. There's resentment, there's tribalism, there winds up being psychosis. You essentially, whatever it is that, whatever side you took winds up being a kind of VR goggles that you keep wearing. And then it results in nihilism. And oftentimes the two worlds mythology results in nihilism, because if everything that is real is in the other world, it makes you feel powerless and helpless to do anything meaningful in this world. And so there's a lot of Christians sitting around who are in their mid-60s who've made a mess of their lives, who feel like they can't do anything because of some of the stuff that we're going to talk about here in a minute. That it made them feel morally righteous for believing certain things, but it made them actually effectively less effective. So GMW says, Kevin, do you feel like you're attempting to fulfill the law of the Spirit? That's a strange question. I feel like I'm doing what I have to do. So the next one over here is what else can, so down here, this debate, it results in things getting codified. The results of debate winds up things getting codified into ideology. And we wind up with these ideologies like Calvinism and provisionism, okay? And these also serve as blockers, so people become oriented toward these ideologies instead of being oriented toward God. So if there is some kind of ideology that you think constitutes truth, and this is what the Bible teaches. If you use the phrase, the Bible teaches, and you're not joking, the Bible teaches blank, the Bible teaches XYZ, I believe the Bible teaches XYZ, you are an ideologue, and you do not understand what the Bible is there for, okay? The Bible is there to facilitate points of encounter and interface with God. It is not there to be a theological fact book, an answer book, a glossary for spiritual life, for spiritual ontology. That's not what it's for, okay? So, and then William Barron said, what about the faith? 1 Corinthians 16:13. Yes, see all the videos that we mentioned starting here at the beginning of this video, that answers that, okay? This is why people lose their blinking minds when we say we don't hold their pet doctrine as an axiom. Yes, that is the case. Very much the case. So ideology, that is also, it's proposition only. In other words, you don't have the other three kinds of knowing. And ideology, it's bad enough to be an ideologue about things on earth, right? People are ideologues about political issues, financial issues, like international relations, climate stuff. People can be an ideologue, and that's just here on this earth. Imagine being an ideologue about things that transcend you that you couldn't possibly experience if you tried. Especially at your current level, no matter what level of development you're at, there is something that transcends you. And there is absolutely no reason at all to be an ideologue about things that transcend you. In other words, there is no reason at all to be attached to a certain set of propositions that describe the things that transcend you. That's not what the Bible is for. That's a very stupid thing to do with Scripture. It's something we definitely want to avoid. And again, we have deception, ideology, attachment, debate, rivalry, resentment, tribalism, psychosis, and nihilism. Again, so these kinds of things act as blockers and stand between us and God. Now, let me get my other prop over here. What is one of the other things, and this is very pervasive. Notice the tribalism down here. See the tribalism? All right, that's my group is better than your group. Us and them. There's us, we Baptists, and them, those Catholics, or those dirty charismatics, or those dirty Eastern, whatever. Whoever's not in your group isn't good, right? That kind of thing. Tribalism. So what happens is everybody starts to go back into church history to find people that agree with their proposition set. So there's a real thick church history book here. Might enjoy reading that sometime. I'll show you the problem with this in a minute. And it's not the problem with this, it's the problem with any Christian history book. Unless it's written by somebody who's not a Christian. What we do now is we have the idealization of past figures. We think, oh, Polycarp was absolutely perfect and sinless, and everything that he did was wonderful, and he was baptized as a baby, so we should all, and you're going to go to hell if you don't. That sort of nonsense, okay? And again, the same kinds of things. So what do? They go back into the past, and you pick a group of people, a person or a group of people that happens to match the ideology that you're attached to, and then you elevate them and you idealize them. And these are our great giants of the faith. And you get all sanctimonious about these people. And what happens is these people take the place of God for you. So as you are attempting to be oriented toward God, this is a blocker which stands in your way. And as you are blocked by your idealization of past figures, and what am I talking about? Every time someone goes to this quote-unquote church fathers to try to prove the pre-existence of what they believed, they are doing this. Now, what we should be doing up here is we should be taking our turn interfacing with the sacred infinite. It is not our turn. We can interface with people from the past if they can help facilitate our vertical orientation toward the sacred infinite. But we can't put them in place. See, we can't put them in place of the sacred infinite. That winds up blocking us from the sacred infinite. Okay? So we wind up with the same stuff, and now I'm adding moralism and sanctimoniousness down here. That also happen. We get all sanctimonious about these people. We get very moralistic about these things. And all of these things in the yellow box, they all exist all the way back here too. But I just kind of added to it as I went. So we should be oriented toward the sacred infinite. Now the people, if you look through history, and you find the people who actually were oriented toward the sacred infinite, you'll find that they are sometimes not the kind who get along so well with the institution. And a lot of people look back and call them heretics, that sort of thing. Rivassery 79 says, I don't think Platonic mysticism is the ideal method if experiencing the emotional relational I think he meant to say of experiencing the emotional relational God of the Bible. Well, what you will find is that I was listening to Daniel Schmachenberger recently, and I am not about to advocate what I'm talking about, but the example that he used is you might go to somebody who deals with crystals, and you're not New Age, and you don't even believe in crystals. And it could be that whatever kind of ceremony you go through with these crystals actually has a positive impact on you. And it could just be placebo, or maybe there is some kind of magnetic or electromagnetic structural aspect of these rocks or crystals that do something, or that kind of thing. Maybe maybe you just don't know, or maybe the reason there is an effect is because there is something outside of your current knowledge set, that it's in your unknown, something you have no idea about. So you can have an experience in a ritualistic setting that you don't understand, that you don't know anything about, that could just be a placebo, that I would say probably if you're stage 5, you can still appreciate and interface with the divine, or have a stage 5 mindset, okay? Stage 3 person can't do this because they still have magical thinking, and they think that the magic resides in the talismans that are used, and that sort of stuff. And that's why you're Catholic who believes that there's something magic in the sacrament, and you're Baptist who is very much against the same sacrament because they're not magical. They have the same stage 3 mindset, and that's problematic for both of them. And when you have a stage 5 capacity for vision, you can realize the interface benefit from such a thing without necessarily having to be attached to any claims that are made about it, or without necessarily thinking that that is a necessity. Kayla says, how does one know that they are having an experience with a numinous? What is the flavor of these experiences? Thanks as always. Well, this is a difficult question to answer, because if you are breathing, I can tell you this from what I can see now. If you are breathing, you are having an experience with a numinous. You do not go and experience the numinous and then go away from it. In him we live, move, breathe, and have our being. It's part of what everything is and who everything is. And so even though I may have presented it as these episodic interfaces, I just don't know a better way to say it. And so it's the more you can see clearly, and the further along developmental mode you are, the more you can perceive that you are interfacing with the numinous at any given time.